blessed be to your day. May it be everything you require to create everything that you desire. Atmospheric pressure. Thought of that title. Atmospheric pressure. We know that if you are familiar with higher altitudes and higher climates, or higher altitudes, like when you go into mountains, you go into Colorado, you go to Denver, the higher the altitude, the deeper your breath becomes and the faster the pace of your breath has to come in order for you to survive, in order for you to thrive in that space. The atmospheric pressure, it would be in the equivalent to how I would express the tightness in your chest or the tightness in your back or the tightness in one of your energetic areas. The higher that we go, the deeper that we get. The higher that we go, that means in the higher aptitude, the higher aspects of our thoughts, the higher that we go in moving past reaction, getting out of that comfort zone, the deeper that we must get. So now, I remember going through my healing process, and the openings to my healing was always that fear, the law, like, oh my God, like, it was the pressure of, as we talked about yesterday, challenging my environment, challenging my conditions, taking acceptance and responsibility for my conditions. That's something that in the beginning, I wasn't ready for. I treated it like most people would treat it and be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna do the grunt work. I'm gonna do the basic. I'm gonna do the trendy aspect. I'm gonna put on the shirt. I'm gonna wear this. I'm gonna grab this book. I'm gonna watch this. Kind of like, it made me think about it. A lot of people treat their, without your shadow work, without your internal work, once you understand that, once you come into this aptitude with yourself saying like, okay, I know none of this is what I thought it was. Now that you are aware of that, how were you able to convince yourself of that? That's the pressure. You're removing things. Remember, it's like things aren't like, if I put this TV is hanging on the wall, it has support. The TV sitting over here has support on the wall. It has support on the wall. It's not heavy because it has all of its support. It's not heavy because it has all of its support. It has all the support that it needs to hang up on that wall. The variables, everything's been set for everything. The TV sitting on the wall. But what happens if one of the bolts weren't done right? Then it becomes, that's what happens with that. That's what happens with this pressure. As you start removing these aspects of yourself, that's where the pressure comes from. That's where the heaviness, that's, oh my God, this is happening. And are you really ready for what you truly desire? Becomes that question. Are you really ready for what you truly desire? A lot of times, like similar to your manifestations, remember I talked about the aspects of your intentions. A lot of the reason that a lot of manifestations and intentions did not work for me earlier on was because I was putting my intention or my manifestation within my conditions. Always caused a conflict. I would always try to put my manifestations of my intentions within the conditions of my environment. That means I would put it in something externally bringing it to me rather than me putting it towards my standard or the quality or me becoming more efficient. That way I can actually attract it into my space. So every time something came into my space, because I didn't do the baseline work, I wasn't doing the internal work, naturally, because you do this shit unconsciously. You do it unconsciously. You have been attracting everything into your space that you've ever needed, but you keep looking at what you want and then you keep you keep losing the lesson that you needed. That's a part of the internal work. You've been receiving everything that you need based on the lesson that you need to learn. But because you're only focused on what you want, based on what you want, based on the emotional void, based on that repression, based on what the memories that you're repressing, based on the known suppressions of your emotional voids of the traumatic experiences. You're not forgiving yourself. You're not going through the proper channels with yourself. So now everything that you do with the intent to maintain the external or your absolute result of what's going on inside of yourself, you always put the intention in the condition. That's why you face this atmospheric pressure when you start coming out of that space. That's why you feel like you lost when you start coming out of that space. Because I did the long God thought today, that great rising. If every year in my space, my conditions have not changed, and what I mean by my conditions are the way I look, the opportunities in the conditions, how I'm learning in those conditions, what I'm maintaining in those conditions based on the quality of my standard, then I need to start checking myself. If my conditions are only the reflection of the quality of my standards, and until I become efficient in my standard with myself, in the true aspects of that work, then I'll always pay attention to my conditions. I'll always put something off. I'll always feel pressure from my conditions in order for me to stay inside of that space. Think about I've broken this down before. Think about your emotional development, your emotional distress. Think about the first time you ever got angry. Think about the first time you ever felt guilt, you felt this emotion with yourself. Think about the first time that you felt that. You have been in that, you've technically been in this hyperbolic chamber with that emotion. So everything you've done up to this point, it doesn't matter how physically old you turn. It don't matter what relationships you got in. It don't matter what you're able to do in the external aspect. It don't matter if you got, talked about it yesterday. It don't matter if it's you got $600 or you got $6,000. Both of those spin the fucking same because you have no literacy of it. Don't matter. Don't matter if you got $600. Don't matter if you got the $6,000. As long as I still got the same emotional underlines, and I still got the same regrets, and I still got those same taglines that I'm dealing with, that I'm triggered by, I'm going to spend the 600 versus the 6,000 the exact same way. You want to know how 600 and 6,000 are the same? Go see something. All you got to do is put the first spin the most and the least spin the you got to be first, and it's expensive to get it first. I'll wait. I'll spend $600 on the same TV. The pressure. Are you willing to go under this pressure? See, this atmospheric pressure that you will go under is cracking you out of, is destroying every other pattern. It's destroying the pattern. It's forcing you to face your patterns. It's forcing you to face your behaviors. It's forcing you to face yourself. This shit's only gonna get heavier. It's forcing you to face yourself. It's forcing yourself to put yourself in a position where you stop trying to set your intentions based on your conditions. As long as I set my intentions based on my conditions, I realized that I was always behind. As long as I always set my intentions within my conditions, I was always behind. I was never in alignment. Never in alignment. Every single time. Every time I set out an intention and I based it based on my conditions of where I was at, I was never on time. I was always upset. I would always react upset. I would always react in stress. I would always react in the normal emotion that was set on the intentions that created the intention or the energy that created the conditions inside of that space. But then I started looking at my standard. When I started doing that internal work, I started looking at my standards. How I use not only to the aspects of how I use my energy, but understanding how I'm cultivating my energy. Where my energy is being cultivated from. What emotions am I putting into this space? How heavy am I living in an assumption with some shit? Do I have an expectation? All of those answers were yes. All of those fucking answers were yes. Because I had to accept that I had expectations. Because inside my space, I always assume motherfuckers had expectations. Simple. If I always assume people have expectations or I'm not living up to their expectations, that means deep down with me, inside my darkness, I have expectations. Have I met those expectations with myself? Have I accepted why I even created that expectation? Have I accepted that point within my life? Or am I going to continue moving on the way that I'm moving on? Am I going to continue running away from, oh my God, I'm almost 40, I'm almost 50, I'm almost this age, the same way that a motherfucker that reacts that, oh my God, I'm almost 30. You're always going to find, once you find one rhythm, you just keep trying to find reasons to repeat that same damn rhythm. The same way that I felt about stepping into my 20s was from when I said I turned 12, was the same energy that I carried into, oh my God, I'm about to be 20, I'm about to be 30, I'm about to be 40, time is getting like this for me. So everything that fit inside of my space naturally would set the tone already to the basis of that fear. That result was based on that aspect. So I'm sitting inside that space reacting or thinking that I'm reacting to shit outside of me, but this shit's reacting to me. My insecurity gets louder. I just call it something else. My judgment gets louder. I just call it something else. I'm going through a midlife crisis. Nigga, that's just my insecurity. That is the basis of my insecurity, my guilt, and my doubts about myself. I'm still holding on to I'm still looking at my old conditions, and I keep setting intentions based on these old conditions on myself. Because the old conditions become the new standard. Really, just think about that. Based on the timeline of staying within this pattern with yourself, your old conditions become your standard. That's why you forget shit. Your last relationship became the conditions of your last relationship became the standard for this relationship. Your last job, the conditions at your last job became the standard in which you live in at your new job. Your old friendships, whatever it may be inside of your space, that becomes your new standard. If I keep going into spaces and not understanding that my conditions are the reflections of how I need to assess my standard, I'm always think about the simple term like, oh my God, yeah, like I'm tired of motherfuckers not really okay. Okay. That's nice. I've broken this down many times before. I had to realize that I did not have a standard. I had some patterns. I had some habits. I had no damn standard. I didn't have a standard. I had a condition. I had some conditions. And I would live out to those conditions as long as everything was met in an emotional, as long as I was met in a certain emotional phase. But in order for me to stay within that cycle, I needed something, everything in my environment had to match me. I want y'all to understand that aspect of your environment or your cage. Everything in my environment had to match me. That means everything in my environment had to have a problem. Everything in my environment had to be angry. Everything in my environment had to basically be childish. Everything had to be stuck in an emotion somewhere. Everything in my environment fit that. Because my old conditions created that new standard for myself. Until I was willing to go back and look at my conditions and accept that my old conditions, give you a question. What's stopping you? And I give out this exercise all the time to my clients. What's stopping you from telling your sister the truth? What's stopping you from telling your sister or your mother or your brother, your mother, what's stopping you from telling your sister the story that she's had in her head about you guys' father is not the story that you have in yours? What's stopping you from saying that? Let's go a little bit deeper. What's stopping you from accepting the story that your mother tells you about your father every single time? What's stopping you from accepting it? Accepting how it makes you feel. What's stopping you from accepting from your mother making you feel guilty when you ask her about the whereabouts of your father or ask about the whereabouts of whatever? And that feeling that comes up, what's stopping you from accepting that? Because that is your truth. Yeah. I'm gonna give you game. That relationship already was ended. That relationship the relationship that you're holding on to in this aspect of time, it has not existed past that emotional point. I had to realize that the way that I held on to the traumatic events when it came to like my father, my moms, and the things that they did, I had to realize that at the age that these things happened, after that point, and I had examples of that, and I'm going to go into these autonomous thoughts on Friday, I had the examples of that relationship, the way that I saw them, the way that they interacted with me, I didn't exist past that point. I didn't exist past that age. on that time loop. So I'm sitting in the space and I'm like, I haven't seen, my sisters and brothers have not seen me since I was 19. They haven't seen me since I was 19. That was the last time they saw me in a physical sense, but that was based on the emotional aspect. So every feeling that happened from the point of 19 back, that's what they're living in. That's what they're living in. That's like when you get into the aspects of a relationship, friendship, and you always notice that wherever you're going, when people are based on the old paradigm of yourself, they always bring back the lad. They go back at least 3-4 years back in time. Or when you're in that current cycle, no matter how far you go forward and you progress, they still stuck on the first time. They still stuck on that memory. It's because they're still stuck within that, hyperbolic, that chamber of the emotional aspect that's helping them, that they're releasing through. I had to accept that, I had to accept that every time I look at my mother is only going to see me as the 16, 17-year-old me. That's it. She can't go past that point because she has not created anything past that point. It would only be repeats. When you're looking at aspects you living inside of your traumas, you live in a fucking repeat. I don't care what you try to do. I don't care how you dress it up. You living in a repeat. And until you assess those lessons, you keep going through that same repeat. So now you're looking at people outside of you getting things. You got to think about it like this, especially when it comes to intentions. You setting intentions and you manifesting shit. You really got to think about it. You bring energy into your space based on the conditions of your guilt, the conditions of your regret. You say you do not want to be, you don't want to feel guilty anymore or insecure anymore. All of a sudden now, one of the people that you always rocking with, they get in a relationship, they get a new job, they get a new car, they get something new in their life. Something happens inside of their life. But you know the background story of them in your life because it's always guaranteed. You looking back in that space, they only see, you saw them from that time up. So only thing you're looking at is what they received based on the conditioning. Why can't I get that? But just a couple months ago, you were talking about, hey, you need to have this by yourself and do this, this, and this. I remember being in that situation. But I always try to, it was always from the state of convincing. Yeah, exactly. I was always trying to convince, nah, if you do this, this, and this, and this, this, and this, then this, this, and this, is that. It didn't matter what the fuck it was that I was trying to say inside of that space. My pressure was not in the conditions. Yo, we can change our conditions. All we got to do is come together. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. You want to look at, all the black people come together. It'll never happen. Because everybody's conditions is based on different emotional aspects, different traumatic experiences. So until I address the quality or my standard, the pressures that led me to that standard, and get to the emotional aspect, I'm going to be stuck in a time loop. Because exactly, using the aspect, my mother seeing me at 16, my mother seeing me at 16, I have to understand that the fear she had at 16, that's what she's going to speak to me through. The fears my pops, the age my pops stuck when he was 10 and 11 and 12, and the shit that happened to him, and being abused and all the shit that happened to him. That's what he spoke through that age space. And so that's what he echoed out, and that's what he kept saying to me. So when I came into my space, I kept doing the same thing around that time. I was the results of those thoughts. That was my pressure. As long as you staying in this continuous loop, and you go, cause you just keep noticing. It's like if you seen Why Did I Get Married, and like that one scene where like, yo, don't be the 30-year-old girl in the club. Don't be the 30-year-old dude in the club. Now you look at your environment, you got motherfuckers out here right now that are still in the mindset of the teen or the adolescent identity, trying to stay relevant in the adolescent identity because of the emotional pressures of their 30s. That's how this shit is created. That's how you create this shit. As long as you're living in the adolescent identity based on the traumatic experiences of your past, the things that you regret, the things that you have not forgiven yourself for, the internal work that you need to be doing, you will always be in that adolescent aspect here. They'll like, this the thing. They can see that, and they might get glimpses of that light. Like my mother right now. Like my mother, if I go to my mother's house right now, my mother will, at first, she will squint. And she will look at me and be like, boy, you done grown. It will be the same exact dialogue. Everything after that point, it will be the same exact dialogue. And you'll notice it'll always be the same exact dialogue because it always starts with the, hey, how you been? How you doing? Filling in the space. You can give out the achievement or whatever you said. The same way that they thought about you when you were 16 is the same way they're going to be thinking about you right now at 45. Because they still living inside of that loop. Because that's where they froze at a lot of times. That's when the traumatic experience happened for them, so now it happened to you. So now so a lot of times when I was getting upset at my mother for not understanding how to save money, or getting upset with my mother for like the things that she was doing in the current state, I had to understand once I started separating away from it, she's acting as a child. She had the childlike mind. Because half of the things my mother would do would be on some childish shit. And it would piss me the fuck off. But I had to realize, I was like, where do I be acting childish at? Because I do some of the same shit. I'm acting just like my mother energetically. I'm acting just like my pops energetically. I'm still acting out this space. Especially when it comes into like the traumatic, like the biggest traumatic experiences, like with sexual trauma and things of that nature. That's what we get into when we do the consultation and knock out these sessions. But even into that space, if I asked you a question, I asked that question on Friday, how did you learn where were you first exposed to sex? And you really had to sit down and answer that question. Some of y'all, it wouldn't be for some, it would not be an answer that you will be proud of. No matter how deeply rooted it is. It could have been simply, you found your dad's porno and you hid it under your bed, or you found out your mom had videos and you hid them under your bed. That itty bitty aspect of shame has been the way that you have been creating those experiences through that pressure to create the different ways that you explore sex, that you explore and use that energy. And you just keep doing it. So now you ask yourself, if I ask myself, why can I not get what the fuck I want? I gotta ask, who the fuck am I? I have to ask the question to myself, who the fuck am I? Because in reality, the life that I had before doing the work was the life of the person of who the fuck I don't know who the fuck I was. That's their life. It's like literally watching Fight Club. You created this entire alter identity to take on the places where you were afraid that you weren't willing to go. And in the places where the places where you're like, oh, I need to pull back, that's when you put yourself back in. You've been living this dual perspective this entire time between you and your multiple shadows. So think about you doing that over and over and over again. Both of them, but here's the key. Both of them live in expectation. Both of them live in expectation until I understand what the expectations were for me. Both of them live in fear. One just takes a nonchalant route, one just takes a non-caring approach to fear, and the other one took a very face-forward approach with fear. Both of these motherfuckers were sexual deviants, but the one understood the aspects of control through sex, and the other person understood the aspects of cultivating through sex. They've all existed inside of that space, and they all continue to exist as long as those triggers are still present within myself. Who the fuck are you? You keep putting your intentions in your conditions. You keep putting your intentions in your conditions where it's safe. It's easy for me to plant my intentions inside of my conditions. Because now all I gotta do is, like, if it don't work, then I can be like, all right, cool, I'm gonna keep doing it anyway. But if you put your intentions based into your standards, it changes everything. See, my intentions are now rooted in my standard. They shine to my standard. So if something comes up based on, give an example. If I know that if I know that something I must do, if something comes into my space for me to wake up early, now I gotta wake up early for it, similar to the gym, workouts, whatever it may be. Getting paperwork together, starting sessions, things of that nature. I know that, 4:30, 5 o'clock, perfect time to get up. That 5 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, I know that's key right there. But now that I've opened up myself to 4:30 and 5 o'clock, everything that comes up is going to challenge my standard and the quality of how I embrace my energy inside of that space. Now, before I came to that point, I was used to waking up. I could say things like, I'm used to waking up at 5 o'clock. I gotta go to work early anyway. But what happens when the work isn't there? What happened when my job was gone for 2 months, a month? Now I still gotta wake up at 5 o'clock. I gotta stop using my conditions to set my tone. Because with or without this, I'm always going to replace that with something. We talked about that yesterday. With or without that being there, I'm going to replace it with something. More and more of me is going to be exposed. This is what a lot of motherfuckers get scared at. The less and less that you have to attach to, the quicker and quicker you become exposed. We always want to talk about, oh my God, we exposing niggas. You expose how many times do you expose that you're compromised? You expose every week that you'll compromise your standards. And then now you're looking at yourself like, oh my God, you'll compromise yourself. You'll compromise your standard to maintain the level of your conditions. Think about this. If I'm in my neighborhood and I own my neighborhood, why would I cause a riot in my neighborhood and destroy my shit? If it's my neighborhood, why would I destroy what's of my neighborhood? That means the neighborhood's not mine. You think about those riots, people were talking about the riots. Yeah. If I have the insurance, but that's if I have the insurance money. If I'm inside of my neighborhood and I destroy my shit, and I'm saying it's mine, it's my block, my hood, that means I should get the insurance money. I should get the insurance money. But if I have no ownership over anything in that space, I gotta take what the fuck they give me. That's what you do every time you keep living and catering to that condition. You keep living in the conditions you keep living in the pressures of your conditions of your environment. The things that you created when you were based in trauma. That's what it looks like every time you walk out the fucking door and you know there's a truth that needs to be spoken about yourself in order for you to do your learning and your healing. Yeah, it really wasn't yet. Every time you go out that door and you know that about yourself, what do you open yourself up? Yeah, you sit there, okay, I'm gonna keep renting the memory. I'm gonna keep renting the memory. Okay, cool. Keep renting the memory. Keep renting the memory. Keep renting the idea. Because until you switch your quality and understanding of yourself into reality with that aspect, and you go through this process and you accept what it is, you will never get more than what you're getting now. Never. You won't. And when you do get it, you'll burn it up the same way. You'll burn up that, when I talked about earlier, you'll burn up that $500 as fast as you burn up that $5. You'll burn up that $1,000. You'll burn up that $1,000 as quick as you burn up the $1 million. You'll drink up the entire you'll drink a case of Four Loko. I talked about it yesterday. You'll drink up an entire case of Four Lokos the same way that you sat there and drank that one bottle of Ace of Spades. They got the same value because you don't understand the value of yourself. You want to stay the connoisseur of that lower level. You want to stay a connoisseur of your assumptions. You want to say that, oh, I'm a connoisseur of being petty. I'm a connoisseur of when motherfuckers try to get at me and try to hurt my feelings, I'm going to show them, I'm going to smack them in the head. You want to stay in that space. Why? Because you're in fear. Because anger is based in fear. Yes, that is. You sitting there upset, you don't understand that fear-based narrative, that's anger. No matter what it is, you can be angry, depressed, in guilt, insecure, in doubt, jealous, all of that shit. All of these are aptitudes of fearing something that I do not have. They all tie to each other. So I don't care what you say until you admit where you are in fear of. Why you're in fear of something, why you're in regret, why you cannot apologize to yourself, why you will not forgive yourself, why you regret this phase. You will only create based on that aspect. You will only create based on assumptions and fears. That means you can get the best lesson that can come to you. You will always create, exactly, those secondary emotions that Penny talked about. You will always create based on that aspect. You will always okay, that's nice. And then you can go look back and I can go look back and look at I remember I had this one homeboy that used to work with us. This nigga was damn near in his fucking 50s. But he would act like he was stuck in his 20s. And every time somebody would try to get every time somebody would say something, he try to get mad, talk about he gonna fight. I'm like, nigga, you look stupid. I remember lifting that man off his feet and bringing him back on the line. You keep moving in these spaces because it feeds what you're already frustrated. I don't care what space you go into. I don't care. It's already there. You just need a reason to express it. You want a space to display it in. You're not petty, you're miserable. You're depressed. But until you sit there and assess your standard, you always gonna be in that state. Are you really ready for the work? I'm coming from a space to where I had to that level of purging. It changes every aspect of you because it's supposed to. You but I want to keep this ring and I want to keep my hands like this. No, all of that shit changes. That's repressed anger, yeah. Repressed, like, whatever it is, when we think about the two bases of emotion, fear and love being those two aspects, two energies itself, everything that you're doing based in fear, anger, upset, all of that shit, all of those emotions are based in you are in a fear or an aptitude of fear with yourself. That means I'm scared of something. That means I have a doubt about something. I'm still in regret about something. I'm still looking at I'm still blaming this on that. My mother did this back when I was 5. I didn't know that shit would faze me. First thing that I asked, like, well, why my mom don't admit it to me? If she admitted to me, then I'll forgive her. The forgiveness ain't for her. Remember, that's a reflection of you. So now every time you go into a space and you ask somebody for forgiveness and they look at you like you lost your fucking mind, you don't accept my apology? No, I don't accept your apology. And that's what that person is supposed to do. See, you keep taking it personal. You take the relationship. I know it sounds crazy, but that's where it's at. You keep taking the relationship personally. Now, impartial. Every time I come to the table, it's impartially. So whatever ship I'm getting on, I'm impartial at that ship. So in the friendship, I'm impartial. In the relationship, I'm impartial. The points where I'm not impartial, those are the triggers that I need to work on. Yeah, like if you come to me, if you apologize to me, and I notice the pattern every time I come to the table, your apology is on the same plate. Your apology is on the same damn plate. You deliver it to me the same damn way. You deliver that apology the same damn way. It's the same Hot Pocket, the same Kool-Aid, the same chips, and then the same damn dessert. You don't change up anything with that aspect of that apology in that pattern. So I know what to expect when I go into that space. So now, when I'm looking at myself, how do I keep coming into this point? How am I not learning how to question? What question I need to ask? Things I need to ask within inside of that space. Yeah, you walk in the same way every single time. And you wondering why they react a certain way. It's your body language. You're not intimate. You gotta be intimate with when I talk about intimacy with yourself, the level of intimacy you must have with yourself in order to step into this darkness, the willingness to have that intimacy with yourself past the point of physical reaction, that means you cultivating some shit. You cultivate some shit. You moving some shit. When you inside of that space, it changes everything. When you learn how to move in that synonymous rhythm of yourself, my body language, I'm more on body language now that I listen to the verbal cues. Because like me watching one of my clients' body language, it tells me if they're telling me a story from the beginning, the middle, or the end. Me listening to somebody tell me a story, just in the tone or the peak of their voice, when I'm not looking at them, it lets me know if they started that story from the beginning, the middle, or the end. I had to find that shit out inside of myself. There was a lot of times where I would tell stories dead set from the fucking end. I tell a lot of stories from the ending. I tell a lot of stories from the halfway point or the middle. I don't really be telling the beginning of a lot of stories unless the beginning of the story is me. Therefore, I don't really listen to stories that have a beginning because now I can formulate the assumption. And the way that I learned that The way that I mastered that, the way that I mastered my body language and really watching my body language, mirror work. A lot of my earlier explorations with myself, mirror work. Looking into the mirror for long periods of time. That is the first show of family, yeah. But I'm sitting there with myself and like, oh, I'm watching myself in the mirror while I'm doing my mirror rituals. I'm looking at myself and I've always done it. So guess what I would do? Mirrors are portals. Every time I go look in the mirror, I'm always looking back. Think about when you do it unconsciously. Every time you look in the mirror from an unconscious narrative and you see a scar or a blemish on your face or something on you, you see that you got fat, you see something. You go back to a moment in time with yourself through that mirror to another point that matches that point. Basically, like you literally are now in if you have not looked at that picture I dropped earlier today, I was cleaning out my doing my usual cleaning, and I was cleaning out this. This is our bowl that we put the incense in. In the bottom of that shit was soap. That's why you saw all of the incense that you saw on the side of that. Those are from incense from the 2-3 year period that I would just leave in there and I just put more in there. That's what you keep doing with your life. Think about how you just keep creating layers of reaction. That is the exact way you create layers of reaction. Here's some dirt, throw some dirt over it, stick some new shit in it. Throw some dirt over it. The higher that you seem to be getting with yourself, the less and less options you seem to have. That's why everything is tuned to that. Everything is tuned to an ending point. I want you to understand this. We're going to get deep into this Friday. Damn, it's been 50 minutes, we didn't even know. Everything down here is based on an ending point. But until you understand that every time that, like when I leave, drop this off, this is a new beginning. This is the end of thought. This is the end of a thought. This is the end of the way that I used to think about some shit. So now it's the beginning of how I now learn to assess. It never ends. The cycles down here are done. The cycle down here is done for a lot of that old shit, the old paradigm. What we mean by that shit being over is the old paradigm is done. All that shit you used to do, it ain't gonna work no more. The way that you used to suppress your feelings and repress those aspects of yourself ain't gonna work no more. They're only going to result, and this is how you get stuck in the time loop. It's only gonna work, but you're gonna notice simple shit. And it's always happening unconsciously. You can look at it right now. You'll notice that the people that you keep attracting around you, exactly. That's what that's the lower aspect of deja vu. You keep denying the fucking spirit. I used to realize, like, my deja vus are even crazier now because they're more fluid. I remember having deja vus and I'd be like, I don't remember the next point. Now when I have a deja vu moment or a breaking point, I literally will sit there and think about it, and then I feel myself shift to that point that's most efficient. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You sitting there, I don't know why you got a VCR at your house. I don't know why you got a VCR. I don't know why you didn't return that tape back to Blockbuster. Yeah, it may be too late to return it to Blockbuster, don't matter. Don't know why you got a tape. I don't know why you sat there, got the tape. I don't know why you keep trying to rewind it when they got that whole trilogy on fucking Blu-ray. You're just afraid to invest in the more efficient patterns. You literally just sitting there, you are afraid to assess the more efficient patterns. You got used to every single fucking day doing this same exact way of life, And now that you burnt, and you, just the thing, I talked about this in the podcast, nothing is draining you. Nothing's draining you. You are already drained. You just keep putting things in your space that are based on your level of light that you trying to maintain or preserve. Ain't nothing draining you. Nothing's, because if nothing can stop me, I'm the original, then that means I got to stop putting these parameters on myself. I keep putting them up there so I can be comfortable and be safe. It's not good or bad. It's just so now when you acknowledge it, you're like, oh, instead of me making levels bad, the matrix is bad, money is bad, this is bad, instead of me trying, because I just keep trying to refill that space for something else to be bad. Something else to be sinister. Because that's going to keep me from getting into the craziest shit. The craziest shit. You keep trying to put yourself in this sinister position of the unknown, not understanding that that's lightweight shit. If you fall out with somebody, that's lightweight shit. The reality to it is, if I go into that dark ass hole, if I go into my hell with my demons, in my darkness, and I face that shit, and it tears me the fuck down, who the fuck will I be then? Will I be, and then the same, this